My dear faithful brothers and sisters, what I'm about to share with you today will change the way you look at your home forever. For over 30 years, I've been studying the profound teachings of our beloved Pope John Paul II, and there's one warning he gave that most Catholics have never heard about. A warning so important that it could be protecting your family from spiritual dangers lurking right in your bedroom. You see that mirror facing your bed? The one you look into every morning and every night? Pope John Paul II knew something about mirrors that the modern world has forgotten. Something that our ancestors understood but we've lost in our pursuit of modern convenience and style. I'm going to tell you exactly why our Holy Father warned against this seemingly innocent household item, and by the end of this message, you'll understand why removing that mirror might be the most important decision you make for your family's spiritual protection this year. But first, let me share something that happened to my dear friend Maria, a devout Catholic mother of 4 from our parish. Maria had always been faithful, attended Mass every Sunday, prayed the Rosary daily, and raised her children in the fear of the Lord. But 3 months ago, something started happening in her home that shook her faith to its very core. It started with restless nights. Her husband would wake up at exactly 3 in the morning, every single night, feeling watched. Their youngest daughter began having nightmares about dark figures standing at the foot of her bed. The house that once felt like a sanctuary began to feel heavy, oppressive, like something was draining the peace right out of their home. Maria tried everything. She increased their family prayers, blessed the house with holy water multiple times, even had their parish priest come for a house blessing. Nothing seemed to work. The disturbances continued, and her family was falling apart from exhaustion and fear. It wasn't until Maria remembered something her grandmother had told her years ago, something about mirrors and the spiritual world, that she began to understand what Pope John Paul II had been trying to warn us about. You see, our Holy Father understood something that modern society has completely forgotten. He knew that our homes are not just physical spaces, but spiritual battlegrounds, and certain objects, certain arrangements, can create openings that we never intended to create. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds like superstition. But let me ask you this. Didn't our Lord Jesus Christ himself warn us about the reality of spiritual warfare? Didn't St. Paul tell us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in high places? Pope John Paul II spent his entire papacy reminding us that the devil is real, that spiritual warfare is real, and that we must be vigilant in protecting our families from influences we might not even recognize. Let me read you something that our Holy Father wrote in one of his lesser-known encyclicals. The Christian home must be a fortress of prayer, where every object, every arrangement, serves to draw the family closer to God, not to create doorways for the enemy to enter. When Pope John Paul II spoke about doorways for the enemy, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was speaking about real spiritual principles that have been recognized by the Church for centuries, principles that our modern world has dismissed as old wives' tales. But here's what Maria discovered, and what you need to know. Mirrors, especially mirrors facing beds, create what spiritual directors have called windows between worlds. This isn't New Age nonsense, my friends. This is ancient Catholic wisdom that goes back to the early Church Fathers. Saint Augustine himself wrote about the spiritual significance of reflective surfaces and their connection to the unseen realm. The early Church recognized that mirrors could become conduits for spiritual activity, especially during the vulnerable hours of sleep when our spiritual defenses are naturally lowered. Think about it. When you're sleeping, your soul is in its most vulnerable state. Your conscious mind, which normally filters spiritual influences, is at rest. This is why the devil often attacks through dreams and nighttime disturbances. And when there's a mirror directly facing your bed, you're creating a spiritual opening right in your place of rest. Pope John Paul II understood this. He understood that the enemy of our souls is cunning and will use even the most innocent-looking objects to gain access to our families. Now, let me tell you what happened when Maria finally acted on this knowledge. She and her husband removed the large mirror that had been facing their bed for over 5 years. That very first night, her husband slept through until morning for the first time in months. Her daughter's nightmares stopped. The heavy feeling in their home lifted like a fog being cleared by the morning sun. But Maria didn't stop there. She remembered more of her grandmother's wisdom that connected directly to Pope John Paul II teachings about creating a truly Catholic home environment. You see, our Holy Father didn't just warn against certain arrangements. He provided positive guidance on how to order our homes according to Catholic principles. He taught that our bedrooms should be sanctuaries of peace, places where we can rest securely under God's protection. Instead of that mirror facing their bed, Maria placed a beautiful crucifix on the wall. She positioned their bed so that when they woke up, the first thing they saw was an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. She created what Pope John Paul II called visual prayers throughout their bedroom, images that would draw their hearts to God even in their most vulnerable moments. The transformation in Maria's family was remarkable. But here's what really convinced me of the power of Pope John Paul II's wisdom. Maria's story isn't unique. Over the past few months, I've spoken with dozens of faithful Catholics who have experienced similar situations. Catholic families who had unexplained disturbances, restless sleep, family tensions that seemed to come from nowhere, all traced back to mirrors facing their bed. Mrs. Patricia, a 67-year-old grandmother from our neighboring parish, shared how her grandson refused to sleep in the guest bedroom whenever he visited. The room had a large mirror directly across from the bed, and the 8-year-old boy insisted he could see people in the mirror at night. Patricia had dismissed it as a child's imagination until she remembered Pope John Paul II teachings about protecting the innocence of children from spiritual harm. The day she removed that mirror and replaced it with a picture of the Sacred Heart, her grandson slept peacefully for the first time in that room. But more than that, Patricia herself began sleeping better. She hadn't realized how much that mirror had been affecting her own rest until it was gone. Then there's Roberto, a faithful Catholic man in his 50s who had been struggling with what he called dark dreams for over a year. Dreams that left him feeling spiritually drained and distant from God. His wife suggested they rearrange their bedroom according to Catholic principles they had learned from studying Pope John Paul II writings on the Catholic home. They removed the mirrored closet doors that faced their bed and replaced them with solid doors decorated with holy images. Roberto's dark dreams stopped immediately, and he found himself waking up with prayers on his lips instead of anxiety in his heart. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Pope John Paul II wasn't teaching us to fear objects themselves. He was teaching us to be wise about how we arrange our spiritual environment. The mirror itself isn't evil, but its placement can create spiritual vulnerabilities that the enemy can exploit. This is why the Catholic Church has always blessed homes, why we use holy water, why we place crucifixes and sacred images in our living spaces. These aren't just decorations. They're spiritual defenses, and when we unwittingly create openings through improper arrangements, we're essentially disarming ourselves in spiritual warfare. Let me share with you some specific teachings that Pope John Paul II gave about creating a spiritually protected bedroom environment. These come from his private instructions to Catholic families, teachings that unfortunately haven't been widely shared but are more relevant today than ever. First, our Holy Father taught that the bed should never directly face a mirror, but it should face toward a sacred image when possible. He recommended that Catholic couples place an image of the Holy Family where they can see it upon waking, reminding them daily of their call to mirror the love of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Second, Pope John Paul II emphasized that mirrors in bedrooms should be positioned where they serve their practical purpose without creating what he called spiritual disruption. This means mirrors on dresser tops, inside closet doors, or on side walls where they don't reflect the bed directly. Third, He taught that every Catholic bedroom should have what he termed anchors of faith: a crucifix, an image of Our Lady, a rosary prominently displayed, or a prayer card that reminds the family of God's protection throughout the night. But Pope John Paul II went even deeper than room arrangement. He understood that our physical environment affects our spiritual state, and our spiritual state affects our families, our relationships, and our ability to serve God effectively. Think about how you feel when you walk into a truly holy space, like the Adoration Chapel or a beautiful cathedral. There's a peace there, a sense of God's presence that you can almost touch. Pope John Paul II taught us that we can create that same atmosphere in our homes, starting with our most private spaces. The bedroom, where we spend a third of our lives, where we're most vulnerable, where married couples express their love in the most intimate way God designed. This space should be saturated with God's presence and protection. This is why our Holy Father was so concerned about mirrors facing bed. Not because he was superstitious, but because he understood spiritual realities that our materialistic age has forgotten. When you have a mirror directly facing your bed, you're creating what spiritual directors call a spiritual distraction during your most vulnerable hours. Instead of your subconscious mind resting in God's peace, it's constantly processing reflections, movements, even subtle lights that can disrupt both natural sleep and spiritual rest. But there's something even more profound that Pope John Paul II understood about this issue. He recognized that the devil's greatest weapon against Catholic families is disruption of peace in the home. When family members aren't sleeping well, when there's unexplained tension, when children are afraid, when spouses are irritable from poor rest, the enemy has successfully attacked the foundation of Catholic family life. This is why Maria's transformation was so dramatic. When she aligned her home environment with Pope John Paul II teachings, she wasn't just improving her sleep. She was closing doorways that had been allowing spiritual disruption into her family's life. Now, let me address something that some of you might be wondering about. You might be thinking, I've had a mirror facing my bed for years, and I haven't noticed any problems. But here's what Pope John Paul II understood that we often miss. Spiritual warfare is often subtle. The enemy doesn't always attack with obvious manifestations. Often, he works through gradual erosion of peace, small disruptions that we explain away, minor irritations that slowly wear down our spiritual defenses. Maybe you've been waking up tired even after a full night's sleep. Maybe there's been unexplained tension in your marriage. Maybe your prayer life has felt dry or distracted. Maybe your children have been more difficult to manage, more prone to nightmares or behavioral issues. These could all be natural issues, of course. But Pope John Paul II taught us to consider whether our environment might be contributing to these problems. He taught us to be proactive in creating spaces that support our spiritual life rather than hinder it. This brings me to something beautiful that our Holy Father shared about the power of properly ordered Catholic homes. He said that when we arrange our living spaces according to Catholic principles, we're not just protecting our families. We're creating launching pads for evangelization. Think about it. When your home is filled with peace, when your family is well-rested and harmonious, when visitors can sense God's presence the moment they walk through your door, you become a powerful witness to the world around you. Maria discovered this truth firsthand. Within weeks of reorganizing her bedroom and applying other principles she learned from Pope John Paul II teachings, neighbors and friends began commenting on the change in her family. They wanted to know what was different, why her children seemed more peaceful, why her marriage seemed stronger. This gave Maria opportunities to share her faith in ways she never could before. Her properly ordered home became a tool for evangelization, exactly as Pope John Paul II had predicted. But let me share with you some other specific guidance that our Holy Father gave about creating spiritually healthy bedroom environments, because the mirror is just one piece of a larger picture. Pope John Paul II taught that Catholic bedrooms should be places of beauty, but beauty ordered toward God. This means choosing artwork, colors, and decorations that lift the spirit toward heaven rather than anchoring it to earthly concerns. He recommended that married couples have an image of the Holy Family prominently displayed in their bedroom, reminding them daily that their marriage is called to mirror the love within the Trinity. For single Catholics, he suggested images that reminded them of their identity as beloved children of God. Our Holy Father also emphasized the importance of having a small prayer space within the bedroom, perhaps a shelf with a crucifix, a rosary, and a prayer book, creating a visual reminder that this space is under God's protection. He taught that the colors in a Catholic bedroom should promote peace and rest. Soft, natural tones that remind us of God's creation, rather than harsh or overly stimulating colors that can create agitation even during sleep. Most importantly, Pope John Paul II taught that everything in a Catholic bedroom should be chosen with prayer and intention. Each item should either serve a practical purpose or draw the family closer to God. Nothing should be there merely for show or because it's fashionable. This might seem like a lot to consider, but remember, Pope John Paul II understood that details matter in spiritual warfare. The enemy pays attention to small things, so we must too. Now, let me share with you what happened when Roberto's family applied all of these principles, not just the mirror removal. They didn't just rearrange their bedroom, they transformed it into what they called their prayer sanctuary. They chose soft blue walls, the color associated with Our Lady. They placed a beautiful crucifix where they could see it from their bed. They created a small prayer corner with their wedding photo alongside an image of the Holy Family, reminding them daily of their vocation. The changes went far beyond better sleep. Roberto found himself naturally waking up earlier and spending time in prayer before starting his day. His wife began falling asleep while praying the rosary, something she described as the most peaceful rest she'd ever experienced. Their teenage children began coming to them more often for advice and guidance. Friends and extended family members commented on how peaceful their home felt. Roberto's mother-in-law, who had been critical of their faith, began asking questions about their beliefs after staying in their guest room. This is the power of applying Pope John Paul II teachings about the Catholic home. When we order our environment according to Catholic principles, God blesses not just us, but everyone who enters our space. But here's something crucial that I need you to understand. The enemy doesn't want you to know these things. He doesn't want Catholic families to understand the power of properly ordered homes. He wants us to think that our physical environment doesn't matter, that spirituality is purely internal. This is why Pope John Paul II teachings on this subject haven't been widely promoted. This is why so many Catholics have never heard that our Holy Father had specific guidance about mirrors and bedroom arrangement. The enemy knows that when Catholic families create truly holy homes, when they close the doorways that allow spiritual disruption, when they transform their living spaces into launching pads for prayer and evangelization, the impact on the broader culture is enormous. Think about the great Catholic saints throughout history. Their homes were known for their holiness. People could sense God's presence there. Miracles happened there. Conversions took place there. This wasn't by accident, it was by design. Pope John Paul II wanted to restore this understanding to modern Catholic families. He wanted us to reclaim the ancient wisdom about creating homes that are truly sanctuaries. Now let me address something that some of you might be concerned about. You might be thinking, what will people say if I remove mirrors from my bedroom? What if they think I'm being superstitious or old-fashioned? Here's what Pope John Paul II taught about this concern. Our first obligation is to God and our families, not to the opinions of the world. If arranging our homes according to Catholic principles draws criticism from the secular world, that might be a sign that we're doing something right. Remember, the world told Mary and Joseph that there was no room for Jesus. The world has always rejected the things of God. Why would we expect it to understand the wisdom of creating holy homes? More importantly, Pope John Paul II taught us that we should be more concerned about what God thinks of our choices than what our neighbors think. If removing a mirror from your bedroom brings peace to your family and strengthens your spiritual life, isn't that worth more than maintaining appearances? Besides, as Maria and Roberto discovered, when you create a truly holy home environment, people don't mock it. They're drawn to it. They want to know your secret. They want what you have. This gives you opportunities to share not just practical advice about home arrangement, but the deeper spiritual truths that Pope John Paul II was trying to teach us. Let me share with you one more story that perfectly illustrates this point. Sister Catherine, a nun in her 70s who worked closely with Pope John Paul II during his papacy, told me about a conversation she had with our Holy Father about Catholic homes. She had asked him why he spent so much time teaching about domestic arrangements when there were so many other pressing issues in the Church. His response was profound. "Sister, the family is the domestic church. If we cannot create holy spaces in our homes, how can we expect to fill our churches? If Catholic families cannot experience God's peace in their bedrooms, how will they find it in the pews?" This is why the mirror issue matters so much. It's not really about the mirror. It's about understanding that every detail of our lives, even the seemingly mundane ones, can either draw us closer to God or create obstacles to His grace. Pope John Paul II understood that the devil works through subtlety and that God works through intentionality. When we intentionally arrange our homes to support our spiritual life, we're cooperating with God's grace in powerful ways. So what should you do right now? Let me give you specific, practical steps based directly on Pope John Paul II teachings. First, go to your bedroom tonight and look at how it's arranged. Is there a mirror directly facing your bed? If so, consider relocating it or removing it entirely. You don't need to throw it away. Just find a different place where it can serve its practical purpose without creating spiritual disruption. Second, replace that mirror with something that draws your heart to God. A crucifix, an image of the Sacred Heart, a picture of Our Lady, or a beautiful verse from Scripture. Choose something that will be the first thing you see when you wake up and the last thing you see before sleep. Third, create a small prayer corner in your bedroom. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Just a small space with a crucifix, rosary, and perhaps a prayer book. This becomes your personal sanctuary within your sanctuary. Fourth, evaluate everything else in your bedroom through the lens of Pope John Paul II teachings. Does each item either serve a practical purpose or draw you closer to God? If not, consider removing it or replacing it with something more spiritually beneficial. Fifth, pray over your bedroom space. Use holy water to bless the corners of the room, asking God to fill it with His peace and protection. Pope John Paul II recommended that Catholic families bless their bedrooms monthly, treating them as the sacred spaces they truly are. But here's the most important step. Approach this process with prayer and trust in God's guidance. Pope John Paul II wasn't giving us a set of superstitious rules. He was sharing spiritual principles that can transform our lives when applied with faith. Remember Maria's story. Remember Roberto's transformation. Remember that Pope John Paul II, one of the greatest saints of our time, considered these teachings important enough to share with Catholic families throughout his papacy. Now, I want to hear from you. I want you to try these principles and then share your experience in the comments below. Tell us what changes you notice in your sleep, your prayer life, your family relationships, your sense of peace in your home. But more than that, I want you to share this message with other Catholic families. There are so many faithful Catholics who are struggling with restless sleep, family tension, spiritual dryness, and they don't realize that their environment might be contributing to these problems. By sharing Pope John Paul II wisdom about creating holy homes, you could be helping families transform their lives in ways they never imagined possible. If you found value in learning about our Holy Father's teachings on bedroom arrangement, let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about Pope John Paul II guidance for creating truly Catholic homes, make sure you subscribe to this channel because I have so much more to share with you. There are teachings about kitchen arrangement that promote family unity, guidance about living room decoration that encourages prayer and conversation, and wisdom about children's rooms that can help protect their innocence and strengthen their faith formation. Pope John Paul II understood that being Catholic isn't just about what we do on Sundays. It's about creating a way of life that honors God in every detail, including how we arrange our most private spaces. The mirror facing your bed might seem like a small thing, but as our Holy Father taught us, small things can have enormous spiritual consequences. By taking this simple step of rearranging your bedroom according to Catholic principles, you're not just improving your sleep. You're taking a stand for holiness in your home. You're declaring that your family deserves to rest in peace under God's protection. You're creating an environment that supports rather than hinders your spiritual growth. You're following the wisdom of one of the greatest popes in church history. Most importantly, you're demonstrating to the enemy of our souls that Catholic families will not be passive victims of spiritual warfare. We will be proactive in protecting our homes, our families, and our faith. So tonight, before you go to bed, take a moment to really look at your bedroom through Pope John Paul II's eyes. Ask yourself, does this space draw me closer to God, or does it create obstacles to His peace? Then make the changes that your heart tells you to make. Trust in the wisdom that our Holy Father shared with us, and prepare to experience the transformation that comes when we align our living spaces with our Catholic faith. Remember, you're not just changing the arrangement of furniture, you're creating a sanctuary where God's presence can dwell richly, where your family can rest securely in His love, and where the peace that passes all understanding can fill every corner. This is Pope John Paul II's vision for Catholic homes, and it starts with something as simple as where you place your mirror. May God bless you as you begin this journey of creating a truly holy home environment, and may Our Lady watch over your family as you rest securely in the sanctuary you've created for His glory. God bless you, and remember, the saints didn't become holy by accident. They were intentional about every aspect of their lives, including how they arranged their home. Follow their example, follow Pope John Paul II's wisdom, and watch how God transforms not just your sleep, but your entire family's spiritual life.